Hello there, Internet, and you amazing creatures of the beyond. Somebody asked me a very interesting question. Like when we are doing any design in Inkscape, you see that we're using the color wheel and whatever, but there are more color profiles over here, and they haven't been explored or explained in detail. And at the first glance, if you go through them, most of them will do more or less the same thing. Mainly manipulate the color, clearly. But each does it in a very specific way, and these models are quite different from one another, mathematically speaking, and coding implemented. And I think HSL is the default, if I'm not mistaken, or it could be RGB, one of the two. But usually I only work with HSL. And it's probably not the best color model out there to use, but it is the most friendliest in terms of user experience because it's so much easy to select a color here and to play with. This is the hue, this is the lightness, this part, and then if you go into this part of the triangle, you're also affecting the saturation. If you only want to affect the saturation, yeah, it's quite difficult to do that. So you could put saturation at 0 and focus on lightness, but then your hue is also, because of saturation is 0, your hue does not display. And on this other side, the hue is, the saturation is on maximum. So again, lightness, it's a pain. It's a pain. But let's see. So for example, in order to understand how saturation works, how this color wheel works, you have to think of it as a 360-degree circle, which it is right here. That's why it's called the color wheel. And if we go here to 0, 0 is red. If I'm gonna reset all of the colors like this, I'm gonna get black. So if everything is at 0, the triangle corner is gonna be here, and this is gonna be here. So if, for example, I'm gonna type 30, like this, 30%, it's gonna go on the orange. I don't know why it's not going on the wheel. Interesting. Let's try 60. Huh. It's not moving on the wheel. That's curious. Oh, so the lightness has to be on the positive. Okay, I see, I see. So we need to give some saturation. So let's go with 30. What the hell did I do? Oh wait, lightness was at maximum. Sorry, lightness should be at 50. My mistake. So if we go 30, okay, now it works. This should be in the orange area. If I'm gonna push the saturation to the maximum, then we get pure orange. If I'm gonna push 60, it should go into the yellows. 90s should go into the green. And if I go 180, it should be into the cyan. And 360 is basically 0, which goes back. So you can divide this circle into 360 degrees, and you can kind of know where the hue has to be set in order to get what you want. So, but this is when saturation is at maximum, of course, in order to work perfectly. Saturation helps us to kind of lower how much of that color is set in there before we move it to the neutral, which is the gray. And if we move it to the gray, it automatically resets to 300 and to 0 here. Now, another thing to keep into account is the fact that if I'm gonna move this slider to black, it's gonna go to black. Everything is gonna go to black. If I'm gonna move it to white, these two values are going to 0 again. So lightness is the key. If you keep lightness at 50, then you can achieve any color, and the saturation at 100, then you can achieve any natural color. And I don't remember what HSL was represented. Let me just check really quick. It has an acronym. It's called, well, it's hue, saturation, and lightness. Yeah, but I thought it meant something else. Whatever, never mind. It's hue, saturation, and lightness. Now we have the next one. It's HSV or value. So HSV kind of reacts the same as HSL, but unlike HSL, if I'm gonna push this to 100, you see it's not resetting this to 0. This means that when I'm pushing this to 100, it's like I'm going to HSL and pushing this to 50. Because this is the 100%, unlike HSV, which automatically, if I can create a conversion. So if this is at 50, this will be at 100. If this is below 50, let's say 24, you see, it goes to 47 here. If I'm gonna go back and push this to 45, this is gonna be a 90. And unfortunately, if I'm gonna push past 50, HSV cannot detect that on this value. So this is sort of like the brightness, but this is the most bright it can go. But it compensates with the saturation because the saturation works differently here. See, here we have 100% saturation, and when we go to HSV, it does not have 100 saturation. And this is more or less for convenience purposes. They have been developed like this, well, for various purposes. I think HSV came right after RGB, and then HSL was invented. And it's all a matter of how you use them. The results can be the same regardless of the two models if you know how to set up the colors. But you have to keep in mind that it's a bit easier to use HSL because it gives you more control. Oh, I murdered Inkscape for some reason. Well, that's epic. That never happened to me. Okay. So okay, we're back to this. You don't dig too hard on it. The point is that HSL and HSV are there to just make it easy to work with colors, and HSL is the easiest in my opinion between these two. But to control the color to its best, you have to use RGB. Unfortunately, RGB does not have a color wheel. It can have one, but it's very difficult to implement it code-wise. So usually they don't implement a color. And it works totally different. This one doesn't have, like, for example, in the HSL situation, you have 360, 100, and 100. And that is how you can achieve this color. But on on RGB, everything goes to 255. And it gets a bit more confusing because you have RGBA. A stands for the alpha here. But it offers you the maximum control over color. So while these values here are like this, they translate into this value. And the first 6 are the RGB, red, green, and blue. And the last FF is for alpha. So I'll demonstrate. If I want to modify the first 2 letters, well, the first 2 characters, because they also have numbers, you see, it only modifies the first 2. If I go to the maximum, to the minimum, it's gonna be 0, 0. So FF is the maximum, 0, 0 is the minimum. And then there's combination between numbers and letters. So it's a bit confusing. But if you know anything about hex coding, it's a very powerful tool to use without the color wheel, especially if you want to get specific accurate colors. And just by inputting the values here, because it's a bit more complicated to do with HSL. And you also have to take into account that some softwares out there prefer HSV or HSB. V stands for value or brightness. So sometimes you'll see it with a B. And the values are set up in a different way than the HSL. So I would suggest that you use HSL when you're doing digital stuff, and HSV and RGB you could use mostly when doing photo editing or raster editing. Not necessarily, but it's more akin to those environments. Also, if I'm gonna put this to 0, 0, okay? If I'm gonna move this is gonna modify the next 2 characters. So again, I can move them to 0, 0, and the third 0, 0. So when you have all 0, 0, it's all black. Now, this one is FF, but if I'm gonna move this to 0, 0, and I'm just gonna type 0, 0, it's gonna make the alpha 0. So I'm gonna give you an example. I can type here in the first 2 FF and it's gonna become red. See? Easy. If I'm gonna type this 0, 0 and go into the next 2 and press FF, it's gonna be green. And if I do it for the last one, 0, 0, it's gonna be blue. But there is another way to demonstrate this. And you might have seen this these things done before. So I'm just gonna duplicate it. So all these circles here, actually I'm gonna try something cute. So since we have this new thing called fracture, bam, easy, easy peasy lemon squeezy, see? So right now everything is at 128. This means it's the gray. And if I'm going to push this to its maximum and this to its minimum, I'm gonna get red. I'm gonna push this to its maximum and this to their minimum, I'm gonna get green, and this one for blue. But here is where things get nice. If I'm gonna push these two together, so the red and the green, I'm gonna get yellow. And if I'm gonna push green and blue, I'm gonna get cyan. And if I'm gonna push red and blue, I'm gonna get magenta. Well, this one has to be at 0. And obviously, if these are all pushed to this, they're gonna be in the neutral, so it's gonna become white. If you're gonna push them all to 0, they're gonna be black. Easy peasy. So this is how you compose colors. But as you can see, the RGB here, if I'm gonna go to HSL, you're gonna notice that you have red, magenta. Well, it's going counterclockwise anyway. Well, technically it should go this way. That's why it's oops, my mistake. So let's make another one. So it's gonna be on 0 right now. So if I'm gonna push here, I'm gonna go to green, which I think I might have forgotten to put something here in the RGB. Yeah, it's my mistake. I forgot to put this to 0. So if I'm gonna go back to HSL, you see, green, yellow, sorry. So this one is 30 degrees. No, not 30 degrees. It's 45 degrees, I think, or 60. Yeah, 60. So this is for yellow. In between these two, you have orange. Then you move to lime green, and then green. Then I don't remember what color this is. Another lime green. It's cyan green, then cyan. Then you have aqua blue. Then you have blue. Then you have purple. Then you have magenta. And then you have pink over here. And then you turn to red. So this is how you can compose colors. You don't have to learn this by heart. It will come natural. But if you want to just be very, very accurate in your colors, you can play with the RGB here. So you don't have to go into RGB over here to modify these things. Because as we said, you can play with the values up to 255 over here. But if you know how to play with the hex codes, you can input them over here as well. And this will adjust immediately. And this applies to HSV everywhere. Now, CMYK, this one is a pain in the sense that it doesn't really work in Inkscape as intended, and all these values goes to 100, and I personally do not use it. This is intended for working with printable layouts, and more importantly, if you are going to create a PDF file, you might want the imported file to have its CMYK profile imported here based on these colors. This actually mutes the color quite a lot. So basically this stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and key is actually black. I don't know why it's called key, but whatever. But playing with the sliders here is such a pain. It's difficult. I don't even know how to properly set them up correctly. And usually I just avoid this one. You could export it, but it's not guaranteed that the CMYK profile is gonna be very well received by printers. So my advice is, if you really want to get true CMYK profile colors, you should either look for an extension, and there are quite a few open source extensions out there, or you might consider saving it as a PNG, then going into GIMP or whatever raster software you want to use, and then using the CMYK profile from over there to export it. Inkscape is not yet there. It's still work in progress. Plus, setting the colors as you wish is and they don't convert. If I'm gonna make this color, if I'm gonna go to HSL, it's gonna keep the same color. So it's not converting the color, which is a pain. Now we got to the very cool things. This one has okay, HSL has been recently implemented, but we're gonna go to HS Love first. And well, this one works a bit different in the sense that the lighting is very static. It's absolute. Well, mostly absolute. Sometimes it will just go in the value plus minus one. It has a little tolerance there. But it happens rarely. Most of the time it stays where it's supposed to be. So this means that this one is locked at, maybe we can lock it at 50. And as you can see, the profile is changing here, the shape. And we can only alter the hue and the saturation. If you only want to alter the hue, move on this slide. And this one, this one, and this one. But if you want to go towards the mutest color, you have to go in the center of the circle. So yeah, it is a bit tricky to use. And again, it's for convenience use. But if you don't want to mess with the lightning slider, this is the way to go. And then you have the OK HSL, which is the recent, which has been recently added. It's not enabled by default, so you'll have to go into Edit Preferences and enabling color selector here. OK HSL. And I think the color picker had an issue. Now, this one works different than the color wheel in the sense that this is basically a sphere. And again, they call it locks, socks, and hocks. This slider for the lighting is also locked, but again, you have a little bit of free play there. It goes 49, sometimes it goes 51, depends. I don't know exactly if this is an error or because sometimes it doesn't react. I don't know. It's weird. But again, it's working a little bit like Hage's Love. But okay, HSL is a bit more interesting. So you can, if you're more used to this kind of a palette, it's also kind of simulating a little bit the values of CMYK. And it's an interesting combination. I personally don't think I use it for anything in particular, but it gives you a more natural feeling of a color, a more calm color, let's call it. So it's good for experimenting with getting some interesting colors that are not so sharp in contrast. And it's nice. It's nice. But again, you have to kind of know where to get the correct values because again, the higher you go into the lightness, the sharper the colors become. So I think 75 is if you want to get a pure yellow somewhere here. Somewhere. I don't use this one, so to be honest, so I don't know exactly how to control it. But it is interesting. So yeah, it has its own a mind of its own. And lastly, you have CMS, which you won't be able to do anything. This is a very unique kind of color profile. And usually this is related to things that are more custom, such as Adobe sRGB or some custom CMYK profiles. And usually those are coded directly into the SVG file. There is a coder in the header as the SVG that allows you to load the color here and manipulate it accordingly. And it's called an ICC color profile. It's complicated. Unless you know what you want to do with this and it's more code oriented, ignore it. You won't use it. But okay, HSL is a really beautiful color palette, especially if you want to play with colors that are very warm and very pleasant. And this is more akin to kind of doing digital painting. So I might be inclined to use this in the future. Again, HSL can still achieve these colors, but you'll have to kind of know where to play with them. And I don't know exactly. I tried to read more about the OK HSL, but I don't really understand the mechanics behind it, and how you can push. I think it does not have the full spectrum of HSL in terms of the saturation. So that might be a reason why the colors look so much more warmer. Because as you can see, I cannot get this yellow. I don't really know how to get it. And yellow should be around here. It's interesting. I can get very close to it, but not close enough. I don't know. Maybe the saturation is not its maximum value, so maybe it reaches only 50%, or I don't know. It sure doesn't look like the. Well, although the saturation here is at maximum. I don't know. It's weird and also very interesting. Anyway, I hope you guys have learned something interesting and this might be useful for you to play with the colors. Definitely a lot to be said on how you can apply colors more accurately to your work. Of course, don't try to learn the theory. Make everything through exercise and always try to implement it in projects. Like if you think that you're doing a certain design here and you got this color and it's really pleasant, then maybe we want to get a gradient. And this gradient, we might want to push it into the yellows. Of course, we're going to push the alpha. And look how beautiful these colors are. Very super awesome. And maybe let's try something else. Let's try this one. Yeah, so pleasant. Maybe try to push it. Oh, this looks amazing. I think I'm gonna use this wheel more often. Although I would like to push some of the colors a little stronger. Anyway, very interesting. And if I keep at 50, yeah, very dubious color. It's more cold, more looks a little bit like watercolor. Very fascinating. Okay, guys. Uh, I like to experiment. So this was a very interesting experiment for me. You guys stay awesome, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye, 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 bye.